Putem alege speranța sau putem alege frica. Alegerea este acolo. Ne putem uita la o problemă sau la o situație și putem să spunem o rezolvăm împreună în beneficiul tuturor. Declarația îi aparține lui Pablo Zapata, reprezentantul UNHCR pentru România, și este o parte din răspunsul la întrebarea de ce ne pierdem umanitatea în situații limită și dăm mereu vina pe alții. Avem o discuție amplă despre cum rămânem oameni într-o lume a tranzacțiilor. Sunt Cristina Cileacu, începe Pașaport Diplomatic. Pablo Zapata, UNHCR representative for Romania, welcome again to Diplomatic Passport.
Many thanks, Cristina, for having me back.
90 de zile. Este perioada pentru care administrația Trump a decis că suspendă ajutorul extern pe care îl acordă Statele Unite prin diferite programe. Supraviețuirea în fața foametei și a lipsei de apă, prevenirea mortalității nou-născuților, eliminarea unor boli infecțioase, dar și sprijinul pentru refugiații din conflictele care încă se mai derulează în lume sunt acum oprite.
We talk this time, Pablo, about a new situation coming from the Trump administration of United States. All the US aid was stopped. That means that a lot of humanitarian programs and projects are also underfinanced or stopped being financed. What does this mean for the beneficiaries of these programs?
Well, as all other organizations that have been receiving a generous contribution from the United States for many years, we are affected by this 90 days re-evaluation and reassessment of the U.S. foreign assistance. We are waiting to see what is the result of that process. UNHCR has partnered for many years with the United States in life-saving operations worldwide. We have done great things in terms of saving lives, in terms of helping those most in need, those affected by the war, those affected by persecution, those affected by terrible violations of human rights. So we are confident that after this period there will be still a very positive relation with the US administration. In concrete terms for us, we have not stopped any of our programs, in the sense that the programs most directly affected have been the ones with what we call earmark contribution, or very specific contribution for a specific program. We do not have that, but of course we are affected in terms of our capacity to spend, our capacity to continue funding projects. Our partners continue delivering what we had agreed for this year. We are continuing delivering as much as we can within this uncertain scenario, and we are waiting for to see how the whole financial situation will evolve, which is quite uncertain. If I may say, in the context of the European Council, the High Commissioner Filippo Grandi, he asked the countries, while considering increases in defense or in other areas of their budget, not to forget the importance in terms of stability and in terms of protection of rights and protections of those most affected by conflict or violations, not to forget them in all these equations.
O țară considerată superputere, așa cum este SUA, produce multă influență în plan militar și economic, dar un rol esențial al unei astfel de țări este să-și folosească și superputerea umanitară. Este mai puțin vorba despre bani în sine și mai mult despre păstrarea unor echilibre în regiuni care sunt afectate de conflicte.
But why is important not to forget? Because maybe now everyone is so interested in themselves and their own good, like Donald Trump, America first. Why is important not to forget that on this planet live people with less fortune, let's say?
Well, there are so many different levels to that question, and thank you for making it. We look at all these events from the perspective not of an international organization, but from the eyes of refugees. And if we step out of our shoes as United Nations and step into the shoes of refugees worldwide, you all of a sudden see the world from a different perspective. Let me give you an example. We mark a few days 3 years of the refugee response in Romania, with many partners from governmental agencies, from the Prime Minister's office, from the presidential administration, ambassadors from many of our traditional partners, and with refugees themselves, with non-governmental organizations, Ukrainian refugees. And we had, as a keynote speaker, an elderly lady, Valentina Kulik. She came from Yash. She had not traveled in plane for a long time. She arrived in early 2022, after her house was bombed. She had left the Nicolina Center in Yash, which has been set up by the municipality of Yash with enormous commitment of resources, as in many other places in Romania. And she had left it 2 times. The first time was to go back to Ukraine to recognize the body of her killed son, who had joined the army, without telling her, as she explained. And she had to go back and recognize bits and pieces. And the second time that she left the Nicolina Center was to come here and to talk to governmental officials, and to talk to ambassadors, and to talk to partners, and to talk to fellow refugees. And it is sobering to see the world from that perspective. Or we could put our shoes in smaller shoes of a kid going to school here in Romania. And if we do that, you realize that on the one hand we should continue increasing our efforts, as we are doing in terms of self-reliance. Refugees shouldn't need assistance. Refugees should be living like any other person in a given country, contributing to the society, engaging with their neighbors, etc. But until that is possible, and has been possible already for many of them, 43% of the refugees from Ukraine who are here declare already to be working. Now, we have 36% of households which are headed by women. 12% of the refugee households are headed by elderly people. And if you put all these elements into the equation, for some of them is possible, for some of them is an aspiration, and they are working towards that, and we are supporting that, a number of institutions, etc. But for some of them it's going to be very difficult to be self-reliant. So what all this financial uncertainty means, it means that some activities, some projects, some developments that we have thought together with refugees, with our partners, need to be rethought. And we need to be more cautious in terms of how much we can embark this year into these projects. Aspects that are being affected here, I will not tell you worldwide. It is different, a complex, very complex figure. For instance, if one goes to the emergency in Sudan, the consequences are dire in terms of immediate life-saving assistance. If we come closer home to Romania, we are stopping new enrollments in language classes that are tailored to the workplace, so to enable refugees to work. We are continuing with the ones that were enrolled, but a plan to expand this to other refugees is being put on hold. At this moment, we don't want to speak about anything else but putting on hold, because we really need to wait and see.
For a response.
We have kept what we consider the essentials active and running. But then there are, for instance, first information at the border points. Refugees continue arriving. Displacement continues in Ukraine. Over the past 6 months, 200,000 persons have been displaced by the ongoing war. So it is not a stable situation. I was in Ukraine accompanying the Deputy High Commissioner, along with my colleagues, the heads of the UNHCR offices in other border countries. We traveled from Uzhhorod in the west to Kharkiv in the east. And one of the points we were was at a governmental center, which we support and other organizations support, receiving people evacuated from front lines, civilians. And you could see elderly persons, like Miss Valentina, in a very similar situation, very reluctant to leave their homes. Nevertheless, they had to. we saw a family of a mother and 3 children and 1 cat. And the children were around the cat and holding their pet as a security, as a continuity, with emotional engagement. Still people are arriving. In the last month, 2,200 temporary protection permits were issued here in Romania. Not everybody remains. Some of these people move, but the most vulnerable tend to remain.
Românii sunt un popor tolerant. Poate de aceea discursul extremist care spune că refugiații sunt vinovați dacă nu ne merge nouă bine, prinde mai puțin în România. Asta nu înseamnă că nu este prezent, dar până și cei care îl practică își dau seama că nu prea au succes. De ce? Pentru că la toleranța nativă a poporului se adaugă și implicarea refugiaților de a-și construi o viață în noua lor țară, România.
That was actually my next question, because we spoke about this topic here at Diplomatic Passport together since the Russians started war in Ukraine. In the beginning, we saw Romanians welcoming refugees, then we saw Romanians turning against refugees. We heard voices saying that they take our jobs, our money, and so on and so forth. And now looks like there are no refugees in Romania. Are they so well integrated? How are the Ukrainian refugees in Romania? Because lately this discourse, luckily, disappeared.
It is luckily, indeed, and that reflects, I think, your question is very correct in that respect. Many refugees are already working. They don't need assistance. They don't get assistance from the government. So only new refugees arriving get assistance for 3 months. That's it. And those who are in centers like Ms. Valentina in Iași, also the center can get some assistance to keep these extremely vulnerable persons. Other than that, there is no assistance. Refugees are, kids are in a school. Still there is a big gap between kids enrolled and kids actually assisting and attending the classes. The issue of language really comes up in almost every aspect. People are going about with their lives. Now, at the same time, those voices were mostly voices that we heard in social media. When we have asked refugees, how do you feel in your neighborhood? Which is the most concrete aspect. Only 2% they say that they don't feel welcome. 2%.
All over Romania, not only in Bucharest, to mention that.
Yes. Sorry, in the whole of Romania. So while we may listen to voices again in social media or in the mouth of some people speaking publicly, what refugees experience is not that. Yes, there are issues sometimes in moments where somebody may say, oh, but you're from Ukraine, but they don't interpret this as they are unwanted.
I recently found out, I recognize I didn't know that Romanians living in the northern part of our country, bordering Ukraine, are often crossing the border to do shopping in a country where is a war still, just because it's cheaper. So it's a normality, I would say. Does this type of action actually help the people living across the border?
Oh, I wouldn't know that. This is the first time I hear about it. There is, and this is why we are not counting anymore number of persons crossing the border, because the border crossings have resumed in some aspects the normalcy of crossings back and forth in economic activities or shopping, etc. So that's why we really are focusing on the number of temporary protection permits issued here. Although we know that some of people take a permit in Romania and move forward. So the area where we continue seeing more people coming are the southern oblasts of Ukraine across the Black Sea. So from the oblast in that area, Odessa, Khersonska, Zaporizhzhia, people still keep coming. And most of the refugees in Romania are from those areas. And that really reproduces what happens worldwide. Refugees try to stay closer to the areas where they live. We were concerned about the winter. We were concerned about the potential effect of destruction of energy infrastructure. We saw at some point people coming from affected areas, but there was no significant increase. Most of the people, and again this is something I saw in Ukraine, most of the people who remain in Ukraine have made a point of remaining in the country. And the people who are already settled elsewhere also have found what we said before, a sense of normalcy and a sense of protection. So between those who are internally protected and those who are protected by countries, friendly countries like Romania, people are finding the protection that they were needing.
Este cel mai la îndemână să arăți cu degetul când ceva nu merge bine. Este și mai simplu să spui, este din cauza lor, pentru că destul de rar oamenii își asumă vreo vină. Migrația ilegală este o problemă serioasă în toată lumea. Poate de aceea ar fi nevoie de explicații mai ample despre diferența dintre refugiați și cei care trec diferite granițe în mod fraudulos.
You have a lot of experience with the refugees, not just here in Romania with the Ukrainian refugees, but also with the refugees across the globe. How do we get from refugees who you are welcomed to extreme reactions like even having parties using refugees as a weapon in order to become extreme?
It is unfortunately not a phenomenon that we don't know. We know this phenomenon. We have lived it in many countries. There is one part that is a bit of a fatigue, which comes with time, but at the same time there is the use of topics of the other, and in general there is a use of dynamics of fear. There is a choice. We all have a choice. We can choose hope or we can choose fear, and the choice is there, and you can look at the same problem, at the same situation, and say, listen, we can pull this thing out together for the benefit of everyone. And you can transmit this to the persons who are more directly affected, but also to the societies that grow in their hearts. We have spoken about the big heart of Romania throughout these years, and not only, but in other situations historically as well. Or you can try to use this to divide and to point fingers and to say this or that. Let me be very clear. The number of refugees in the country do not affect employment for Romanians. Yeah. Romania has a level of economic development that actually needs both skilled and semi-skilled workforce, far more than the very skilled Ukrainian refugees are contributing, or people from other parts of the world are contributing to the development of Romania. So when you see the substance of those arguments, they don't really hold water. They just appeal to fear. So our invitation in general to decision makers, to persons with a capacity to speak to the population, to those in positions of responsibility, look at the problem and it is your choice. You can try to communicate fear or you can try to communicate hope. People like Ms. Valentina certainly need hope around them.
We did talk about refugees, Ukrainian refugees in Romania, but also I want you to remember us for the Romanian public as well. Where are the other parts where refugees maybe are less lucky than the Ukrainian refugees in Romania?
Well, I was mentioning Sudan before, and the crisis of Sudan has seen an enormous level of displacement over many months, and if you put it in context, years. And the situation remains so unstable that people cannot really go back to their homes. And the assistance there requires really very hands-on and very, very immediate type of assistance, immediately life-saving assistance. We have examples in many other parts in Africa, but we also have examples in the Middle East. We have, of course, Ukraine, which has the component of refugee countries, but also has the component of what we do together with authorities, with the UN agencies, with civil society partners inside Ukraine, which is of a great urgency and great value. In a way, and this is, for instance, one of the issues that is mostly affected by this financial insecurity that we are living, this uncertainty, in a way, it is one of the funds, one of the pockets within UNHCR that this has come from, is our emergency reserve. So we have, the High Commissioner has decided, of course, to use that emergency reserve to keep operations, particularly those suffering the most acute needs, running, and people receiving really life-saving assistance that is needed today. Now, this means that we don't have the same economic capacity to respond, or financial capacity to respond to new emergencies. Last year, UNHCR was engaged in 43 emergencies. So we tend to see quickly the international news that great journalists like you bring to the house to our house on homes on daily basis. But last year there were 43, 17 of which came from years prior. We have no reason to assume that there will be no other emergencies popping up, other points of conflict in the world. So these are issues where also we feel the stretch right now.
Pablo Zapata, thank you so much for this interview.
Thank you very much for having me.
Atât pentru astăzi, dar rămânem în continuare online pe pagina de Facebook a emisiunii și pe conturile noastre de X și Instagram. Revenim cu subiecte noi din lumea diplomației și a politicii externe, vinerea viitoare de la 11:30 și reluare sâmbătă după miezul nopții. La revedere!